Okay, just a quick follow-up to my previous video on 9/11. Why is it that in light of all the evidence debunking the official story, do people still accept it without question? Why don't people wake up to the truth about 9/11? Ignoring the Israel connection and the Zionist criminal network, arguably the more complicated areas of this subject, the simple fact is that 1400-degree jet fuel fires we saw in the towers are not hot enough to melt steel, which according to one New York firefighter was like a river of lava beneath the rubble. This one fact alone, amongst the mountain of other incriminating data, such as nanothermite explosive being found in the rubble, a substance which can melt steel, is enough to raise serious questions. So why do people ignore it and choose to trust a government that has proven to lie to suit their agenda? I mean, we all remember Saddam's weapons of mass destruction that he definitely had. Well, it's not through lack of proof, but what the implications of a controlled demolition are. It means our leaders are criminal psychopaths willing to kill their own people, which means the media is willing to lie for these psychopaths. Which implies that our news is not really news but propaganda, and that all TV and movies which support the official story are also propaganda. Which calls into question not only current events but our entire known history. If they lied about 9/11, then what else did they lie about? It means the whole of the Western world is under a mass deception, run by criminal elites whose interest is in keeping us stupid and misinformed, occupied with drivel, fed with junk, and discouraged from critical thinking. It means the war on terror was a war of terror, in which the West invaded Iraq and destroyed countless lives for literally no good reason, whilst at the same time convincing the masses that what we're doing there is heroic. Which means to acknowledge that it's actually us who live in a land of evil and tyranny as opposed to the various Middle Eastern nations, which inevitably leads to a completely new perception of how the world operates, of who the powers are, and of who the real enemy is. So to realise 9/11 was an inside job is more than just a case of acknowledging a few facts. It means to completely reconstruct your worldview and see that the real war on terror is the war between the psychopathic criminal elite and ordinary people. Once you see through 9/11, the whole deception logically unravels, all of which makes for a tough pill to swallow for those who are content seeing the world through rose-tinted goggles, where defending our freedoms is why we invaded the Middle East. So why wade through all the evidence debunking the official story when all it's going to do is challenge your beliefs and burst your bubble of security? I mean, it's much easier to go about life just accepting the hijacker myth. The fact is, people are just not willing to accept that institutions they've spent their lives trusting have actually deceived them. People like to believe they're intelligent. They like to believe that if this was one of those conspiracy theories, then they'd be able to see through it. The very word conspiracy automatically associates those who raise valid and important questions about 9/11 as the typical ham radio doomsayer of the mid-90s. Yes, John, the aliens are coming to take our brains. This perception is outdated and obsolete, because to see that we've been lied to about 9/11 is not hard to understand. There's been multiple examples of high-rise buildings that have burnt longer and hotter than those on 9/11, none of which suffered complete structural failure as a result. The only 3 buildings in history to actually collapse into their own footprint because of fire all happened on 9/11. Yeah, no, I mean, that's completely natural and normal and not at all suspicious. Now, the critics argue, yeah, but what do you have to say about the experts and professionals who agree with the official story? Firstly, I'd say that there is such a thing as an uninformed expert. I'd also say that it's a risky venture for a working professional to dissent from the official narrative if he wishes to maintain job security or reputation. And there lies the folly of relying on the mainstream media for unbiased information, because the people we get our news from are the ones most at risk from conducting an honest investigation. Like if a journalist ever wrote a piece about Israel's connection to the whole affair, he'd find himself out of work, with a newfound reputation as an anti-Semite. Such was the case of Tony Farrell of the South Yorkshire Police, whose beliefs about 9/11 being an act of state-sponsored terrorism, inside job in other words, ultimately led to his dismissal. So basically, those with the authority to expose this fraud, like politicians and public figures and the like, are the ones least likely to question it, because they've got too much to lose. So rule number 1 about understanding 9/11 is to know that the truth of this event will never be exposed from a mainstream source. You have to do your own research. And that to demand a new investigation into 9/11 is to ask the same people who covered it up in the first place. The war that began on 9/11 between the criminal elites and ordinary people is still going strong, and the recent attacks in Brussels are proof of that, because ISIS are nothing but a repercussion of our invasion of the Middle East, based on the false assumption that Muslims did 9/11. And that's why exposing this is so important, because all the shit we're seeing right now with terror attacks, all the fear and paranoia, and the slow breakdown of Europe due to an unprecedented third world invasion, all comes back to 9/11. And remember, the people who lied to us about Saddam's weapons of mass destruction are the same people who told us the official story of 9/11. So why continue to trust the word of liars? So yeah, these were just some extra thoughts. It's a depressing subject to look into, but it's necessary, because the truth of this event will never be exposed from a mainstream source. The truth depends on ordinary people like you and me getting informed, getting educated, and helping spread the message. Again, there's some more information below, and thanks for watching.